After having ridden the new classic 350 J Series motor for some time now, I've realised that it truly is such a gem of a motor. It still has the real vintage feel, but without all the shakes and buzzes of the old original 500 motor, or 350 motor for that matter. So when I was offered the opportunity to ride one of the older 500 Bullets, I jumped at the chance. This is a 2019 Royal Enfield Bullet 500 it's only got 1,500 kilometres on it from new, and it looks basically new. So in reality, this is what a Bullet 500 was like back in the day when it was new, although 2019 wasn't really a long day ago, was it? But these older 500 motors really do go back a long way. Sitting on the bike, it feels like the new classic, but when the motor starts, you know you're on something very different. The bike shakes and it makes nice mechanical noises, and you can hear stuff happening inside the motor. The mirrors are vibrating and the bike is shaking, and it's making this dug noise from the exhaust, and it's awesome. Many oldies like me might say that this is the way they used to make real bikes and reminisce about the good old days and about how great the old bikes were. But in reality, the old motor did need a complete makeover for various reasons, including Royal Enfield needing to meet tightening emission standards. So, with that being said, just how much difference is there between the old 500 motor and the new J Series 350 motor? Well, the answer is a lot, but not necessarily in the way I initially thought it would be. We could talk about in ergonomics and vibrations and handling and what it feels like to ride, but what we're looking at here are the motors and what each does for the character of the individual bike, and it plays a big part. Well, first of all, the obvious. One motor is a 500 and the other is a 350, and more significantly, the 500 motor has push rods actuating the rocker arms, while the 350 has a chain-driven overhead camshaft. And basically, the 500 has more moving parts to get it going, which in turn makes more nice mechanical noises, while the smooth chain makes a less rougher-feeling motor in the 350. I should say here that losing the push rods on a new bike for some is a step too far of a departure from the old bikes, and that may be so. However, what it is really is it's just a new generation of the good old motor that everybody has known and loved in various ways over the years. I should say here that the motor on my bike has a few modifications. There's the Fuel-X Lite fuel injection optimizer, the DNA air filter, and the exhaust has a cat delete pipe. And the result of that is that not only does it make the bike sound really good, it seems to have just a little bit more torque than the standard 350 motor. So having said that, and keeping that in mind when we look at the power figures, so considering these minor mods, you'd still think that the 500 would outperform the 350 motor, and yes, it does. However, the power and the torque is created with a lot of fuss from the motor as the revs rise, and we must remember that these motors do their thing so well at lower revs. Looking at the power and torque figures for each bike, we can see that the 500 produces more power and torque, 5.3 kilowatts more power than the 350 and 14.3 newton meters more torque at the same revs. But the perceived performance was pretty much the same, and considering that both bikes weigh pretty much the same, I don't get it. Riding up this hill, the Lidl 350 hunkered down at what felt like peak torque in fifth gear and just pulled its way up, and the revs didn't sound too high or too low, and in no way did I feel like I'm hurting the bike. And as the revs dropped, the 350 torqued its way up. Now that could be a result of the modifications I've done to my bike, so I need to consider that. However, the 500 pretty much did the same thing at the same speed, but it sounded different. Have a listen. So the 500 produces more and makes a bit more of a fuss in getting the job done, while the 350 feels happy to oblige in whatever way it can, and it revs away getting what's needed. And I find it unusual that I'm talking like this about the motors, because I really thought I'd be commenting on the vibrations of the Bullet and just how much more powerful the old 500 feels, and it does feel more beefy when compared to the new motor. But I'm guessing that a new rider to the Classic Reborn would still feel the vibes and enjoy the experience, because it's still there. It's just not as obvious as it is in the older motors. I've owned a few of the old Classic 500s and really loved the feel of the old motor, but I didn't realise just how way different the new motor is until I rode the bikes back to back. I'm not saying that the new motor is better, it's just that the new motor it's different. I should say here that the gearbox on the 500 was no match for the gearbox on the 350. The 350 is slick and sweet. The 500 gearbox is just like the gearboxes that always have been on the old 500s. Having said all of that about the motors, just how much does each motor help create the character of these bikes? And it's a lot. The 500 feels much more like an older bike, with all the charm and the weirdness that goes with that, and the 350 feels like a version of an older bike with all the charm and weirdness that goes with that. I'm pretty sure that doesn't really help, but with these bikes it's purely a matter of opinion on how each makes you feel when you're riding them, and you really do need to ride them to see what works for you. So should you buy a good used 500 Bullet or 500 Classic, or maybe even an older model 350, or should you just go for the new 350 Classic straight up? Now, Sensible Brain says go for the 350, but since when has Sensible ever had anything to do with buying another bike? For some it would be an easy choice to go for the new bike, but I'm thinking that if you're after an every now and then ride, something that's way different to what you're riding now, or even maybe if you're anti-technology at heart, if you can find a well-preserved one, grabbing one of the old Classics or Bullets could be a good move. Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed the video and maybe you even found it helpful, you might like to give a thumbs up and maybe even subscribe down below. That'd be great. So until next time, go well.